Are we ready to go? Hey, this is Coaching with Chris. I'm so excited that you joined. I am excited to bring Jason Frazier, coach, doing amazing things. I had two people say, I never even heard of Jason. Now he is everywhere. And I think he's making a big pack into our industry. Jason, welcome.
Hey, what's up, Chris? How are you doing, my friend?
I actually thought of this today. I go, you know what? I'm going to be talking to Jason today. I need a sweatshirt and a ball cap. and then I'll fit right in.
Yeah.
And I forget it, so I didn't do it today.
Well, you look way better like that, my friend. It's hey, look, I have no fashion sense. My wife will tell you that. So the ball cap and the hoodie is how I roll. And speaking of ball cap, man, I need one of those Windsor lids ASAP.
Yeah, you got it.
All right.
I thought of sending you two things because I wish I had it here. I showed everybody right now. But I just got our very own first edition Windsor drift car. It's a remote control drift car. And it's our new little gift that we've been working on. And I'm going to have to send you that. You have some fun. I don't know if you got kids, but.
Oh, yeah. No, they'd love it. I'd love it. Actually, forget the kids. I'll be playing with that. So.
That's right. That's right. So we're talking about coaching. I'm passionate about coaching. I love to give back. I'm not like in the coaching business. You are 100% into the coaching business. And, for everybody to relate or to get to know Jason a little bit, kind of give me the Jason story. Like, how'd you get involved? How'd you get in mortgage? How'd you get to this coaching deal?
Yeah. So it's a long story. I'll make it real quick. Cause I'm sure a lot of people, they've seen me on a podcast or heard me on a podcast and they've heard the story. Yeah. So real quick. So I was born in the mortgage industry. It wasn't my passion. It wasn't something that I got into because that's where I was focused, but I was born into the mortgage industry. My mom was the former president CEO of Mason McDuffie Mortgage, founded in 1887. And so it's one of the oldest mortgage still around today. It's one of the oldest mortgage banks in the country. And it was a family business. We owned it. And she retired 2 years ago.
Okay.
And it's now owned by someone else. And still around. In fact, my cousin still works there. And so I was born into it. And she was actually one of the first woman CEOs of a mortgage bank in the country. She started as a receptionist, worked her way up. And anyone that knows her knows that, she doesn't play around. She's all business. She worked very hard. And a lot of the reasons for where she got to is because she focused on learning every aspect of that business. She has basically done every role you could do and at a mortgage bank. And so, and eventually, cultivated and culminated into her running one. And so, so that's how I got into the mortgage business, because it's a family business. But I was in venture capital technology startups. I'm an engineer by trade. And so I was in Silicon Valley doing all of that. I used to work for Peter Thiel, founder of PayPal. So I kind of came up with what they call the PayPal Mafia. You could Google it, see those are the people that I worked with. And so in 2009, after working I worked with some other Peter's portfolio companies, but I worked directly with him at his hedge fund. And I took a sabbatical in 2009, made a lot of money, didn't really need to work. And so that lasted about 2 weeks of playing golf. And I'm like, man, I'm bored out of my mind. I can't do this. And I decided to do some consulting, which was for the mortgage company. I had helped them back in 2005 with their technology and whatnot. And so I did an audit and they said, look, how would you like to be a consultant? I was that for about half a year. Then I decided to join it full time in 2009, which, as you know, was an incredible time to join the mortgage industry because everything was just perfect. And actually NMLS, like my arrival was the same as the NMLS licensing. So, so I have that to hang my hat on that. And I've been in the mortgage industry ever since. And so I worked with my family's company until 2019. And I held the chief information officer, chief strategy officer, and chief marketing officer roles while I was there. I didn't get into marketing until 2016 full time. It's just I had a knack for it, and it just ended up being something good. I was just good at it, and I like creating, and it was a good thing. And I started. I wouldn't call myself a coach, but I was coaching my loan officers in marketing and, working with agents and helping them get more deals, because at the end of the day, there was no one in our company that was built to do that. We had loan officers, we had our, regionals, we had our, our production manager and our EVP of production, those types of things. but no one was really built or adept on kind of like the new era of consumerism and reaching the modern consumer on social media and other modern marketing technologies. And so I just kind of took that role on, and then that cultivated in me putting myself out there. I got invited to speak at conferences when it came to marketing. I coached real estate agents. I spoke at Inman Connect, San Francisco, New York, Las Vegas. One of the few mortgage professionals that actually spoke at that. At the time, that was only me and Anthony Shea of Loan Depot. I was honored to be able to do that. Made a lot of connections on the real estate side. And I got into like more, I would call marketing coaching and training. And, then 2019, I met Christine Beckwith that we were both speakers at Gary Vaynerchuk's conference, Agent 2021, and developed a relationship. She obviously runs 2020 Vision for Success Coaching. She's an actual coach. And then I got into it. I got in with Next Level Loan Officers, came on as a coach for them. And then I've been a consultant and been someone that has just decided to build a brand and help loan officers and advocate. And now I'm doing that full time.
Wow. You love it?
I do. I love everything that I do.
Yeah. What are you seeing? Are you coaching more loan officers or realtors too, or what do you focus on that side today?
Loan officers, 100%.
100%.
I will not do that with agents ever again. Nothing against the agents there. And I met some great, don't get me wrong, I met some great agents, but if I'm choosing loan officers every day of the week.
If I'm going to reboot myself in 2024 and be able to get reprogrammed, had this discussion with a loan officer the other day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to hear your perspective on this, but he's like, Chris, here's the thing. I actually know what I'm supposed to go do when I show up at the office or I go into my office. I know what I'm supposed to do, but I can't get myself to do it. And I hear a lot of loan officers say or feel that they know what to do. They know some of the right things to do, but they just can't get themselves to do it. What do you say to a loan officer like that?
Yeah, it's definitely not uncommon, right? They're definitely not unique. That's the common thing. And look, that's common for most salespeople, right? Because look, if you go back to like when I was running sales teams and whatnot, and they'd be like, hey, you need to decrease volume, blah, 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 whatever. And they would say, let's do some incentives for doing deals. And I'm like, they're 100% commission. What other incentives could they possibly need other than like, if they don't make money, like, why do we have to give money on top of money for them? Because they're not making money. They don't have salaries. They're not doing anything. So, but I learned, that's when I actually got into really understanding like, what they call like neuroscience, and then I really used it for marketing. But at the same time, to me, I don't make a difference between sales and marketing. To me, sales is marketing, marketing is sales. And I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but personally, and that's how I've kind of held true to everything. But it comes to like one is understanding that it's not motivation, right? The missing ingredient is not motivation. People think they get motivated and then they take action. No, they get inspired and then they take action, and then motivation action breeds motivation, right? So the more action you take, the more motivated you're going to get, but it all starts with being inspired, not motivated. So a lot of people have that backwards, and understanding that everyone's trigger is different. Right. And the one thing that loan officers and just all salespeople in general, if they're not self-driven, because a lot of them aren't, right? A lot of them like are not like ready to go and they hit their office because they know what they knew, but they look at it as tasks, not as a passion, not as a driver to success. Right. And so everyone's trigger is different. So what the first key is, a loan officer has to identify what their triggers are going to be.
Right.
The triggers to action. And then once they have those triggers to action, then the motivation comes. It would be surprised. And a lot of it just because they don't have, they can't be accountable to themselves. So as much as I would like to say there's some, silver bullet or saying or anything else, they got to identify what their triggers. And that's going to, one is they're going to have to be inspired to take the first step, which is talking with a mentor, a coach, somebody that understands that, to identify and help them with their triggers. It could be their mom. It could be meaning like, hey, like my mom is, someone that's been an ultimate driver. And I use her as an example because she is for mine. Her legacy is what she built, and what she in this industry is something that I is a driver for me. Right. So I have, my mom, my kids, family, like that could be a trigger, right? It could be a yacht, right? It like legit, like it could be something material, right? Everyone
So
has
the
their own
trigger a
trigger.
why?
I'm sorry?
Is the trigger the why?
A trigger could be a why, right? Now, and it doesn't need to be a Simon Sinek level why, but everyone like vision boards, right? People do that and they look at all the things they want to accomplish. It could be vacations. It could be a lot of things. It could be, but what does that mean? What is that? Does it mean freedom? Does it? So this is where you got to go deep with it. Like I said, a mentor, coach, or someone that just understands that. And then everywhere around them, they need to have reminders of that trigger, because in this business, you're gonna get no's, you're gonna get consumers that are shopping you, you're gonna lose deals, you're gonna be told no, from like an agent or something like that. You're gonna get knocked around, you're gonna get knocked down. So the worst thing you could do is look around and just see reminders of business as opposed to the triggers that are actually going to make you take action, right? Like, so for example, I have kids, I have 2 autistic kids, and one of them is a little worse off. So he's going to need a lot of, support growing up, right? So one of my triggers is having that picture and understanding that I got to do a lot of things so that his life is good. That's a trigger for me. And if that doesn't get you to do action, then I got to find another trigger that will. And that's a pretty big trigger for me, right? So it all comes to triggers for you to remind you as you're looking around, whether it's a note, whether it's a saying, quote from your dad, sister, something that is going to be powerful, that's going to hit you here, because it's going to hit you here to make the spark go up here. And then this is where you're going to start taking action and realizing, and look, it's not a perfect science. You could have all the triggers you want. Some days you're just not going to show up, and that's okay. Right. So you just got to have systems and processes in place around your triggers, because the triggers breed actions. You start with inspiration on what it's just like losing weight or something like that. Right. But they don't have triggers around them, knowing that like, this is what I want to look like when I wear a suit. Right. Or I have someone that made a bad comment about me on Facebook because I'm fat. Right. Or something like that. And that's a trigger. So I'm putting that up so I see that. Right? Maybe it's surrounding yourself with greatness or quotes or other people that you want to emulate, because it's all different. And there's nothing negative about it. That's why I said like a material, like whether it's a sports car or some other things, like, hey, I want to own a Rolex, but maybe that Rolex goes back, and I'm using this as a story, that I heard from when I worked at EPM, and Rolex is basic, because I loved a guy growing up and didn't have a lot of money, and this guy was a celebrity, and he had a Rolex, and he was part of his act and that type of stuff, and so that meant there was it's an emotional connection, because it was about not having and wanting to have and working towards that goal. Yeah. Right. And so it's having that around you all over the place, so that when I'm looking around my desk, when things aren't going right, or I'm having I had a bad meeting or some other things, or I failed on something that I'm trying to do and accomplish, to look at those triggers and realize, all right, I got to take the next action, and that next action is going to motivate me to take another action, knowing that this is all a numbers game. It's all percentages, but it has to start with something. If you're not self-driven, some people don't need any of that. They want to be the best, right? So they're driven, and but not everyone's built that way.
I hope everybody caught that one thing in the very beginning that you said, Jason, which is motivation doesn't come first. It's not motivations first. And I think I got to find my motivation, then I can do it. And then they never find the motivation, or they never can stick to it. And that just like really resonated with me. And I think it is triggers. I was thinking of triggers in my life where it actually got me to do something. Mm-hmm. Like one time I come around the corner at an event a couple years ago, and this kid said, "Wow, you're really gaining weight," in front of all my buddies, and everything. And I was embarrassed. I was like, I said words inside my head, but I didn't say anything. I go, "Oh, that's funny," or whatever. I had my response back to him, but it shocked me. And I've never forgot that. He apologized to me later. I shouldn't have said that. That was wrong, whatever. But he said it. So he saw it. Mm-hmm. And because he saw it, that was my trigger. And then I had to get on this train. Yep. And I was thinking, that does make a lot of sense. Well, kind of switching gears a little bit, Jason, what do you see the future in coaching today? to be able to help a loan officer for, I think we're heading into some really, really good years in the mortgage origination business. If I'm gonna hire a coach, pick a coach, like where do you see the coaching industry being able to help these originators get to the next level?
Yeah, so I think it's if I'm going to go from the originator's perspective, because I think a lot of them approach it the wrong way when it comes to coaching, right? I personally have coached. Christine, who runs 2020, she's my coach. And I coached with Arate, with the Arate Syndicate, which is Ed Milet, Andy Frisella. That's this hat, right? So, so I believe in coaching myself, and I think.
Are you still getting coached by Andy?
I am not. No, I stopped doing that because I had to execute, right? Like I did that for about a year and a half, and it was great. But now it's time to execute. Now, at some point, I will go back because it was just a great community to be a part of. Definitely high driven, high. It's not for everyone, but it helped me a lot. It helped me shape, kind of like my thoughts and my drivers. Right. And if I'm looking at, so one is when you're looking for a coach, understand that if someone isn't personally coached or has been coached and they don't talk about that, they may not be the best coach for you. Right. Because if they don't believe in coaching, they're probably not going to be a good coach. I'm not saying they have to be an active coach, but generally the best coaches that I've seen are ones that believe in coaching because they get coached themselves.
Yeah.
Right. But as a loan officer, one is the first thing you got to ask. There's two questions you got to ask. Right. One, and if the answer to no is the first one, then forget about coaching. One is, are you coachable? Because I'm telling you right now, and some people disagree with me, not everyone is coachable. Not everyone is coachable. So that's the first, and you got to be on. This is a question you ask looking at yourself in a mirror. Am I coachable? Right? Because I've had loan officers tell me they're coachable, and I'm like, you are not coachable. Right? Your way is the way. There is no, and I brought up scenarios, and I'm like, and I said, look, if you're telling me that's coachable, then, you go ahead and you're not going to coach with me. You're not going to coach with me. You could go cut, but I guarantee you, we're going to be having this conversation in 3 months, maybe sooner, right? 30 days. One is, are you coach? And guess what, guys? It's not a negative if you're not coachable. Because you're going to have to find another way then. If coaching is something that you feel you need and you're not coachable, you're going to have to find another way, and coaching may not be that way, right? Or it's not going to be an effective way. Two is, are you ready to receive coaching, right? So if you're coachable, but sometimes people aren't ready for it. Coaching, with being coached, people, and a lot of people, and look, not every coaching program is the same,
right?
Like not every coach is the same. And so you got to understand is, are you ready? Because some people are like, well, I don't want to be told what to do or what. And I'm like, well, then you're not ready to receive it yet, because that's a coach one is a coach isn't about telling you what to do. They're walking with you in a sense, right? Just think about, and look, it's easier to have these conversations with people because I played sports growing up, right? So it's easier to have those conversations with people that were playing on a team that have been coached, right? And understand that, look, if I'm talking about coach, like you're not, hey coach, I don't feel like I'm not shooting jumpers today. I'm not running sprints. Okay. Well, then you're not playing, right? You know what I mean? Like it's so that's what people got to understand. That's what I'm talking about with coaching, right? They're going to tell you how to be the best version of yourself, how to be successful, but they're not getting on the court for you. They're going to show you the plays, show you how to execute them, but they're not doing it for you. They're going to walk with you, and they're going to tell you how best to succeed to achieve your goals and the goals of the team. Right. Yeah. And so you have to be coachable. And the people aren't, and then you have to be ready to accept coaching. And then the third is write down, what do you want? What are the objectives and results? And you got to dig deep on this that you want from coaching. Okay. And then once you do that, then you go out and interview, because there is not even 2020, no coaching program out there is perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect coaching program. There is a such thing as a perfect fit, right? Every loan officer wants something different, and every coaching program will offer something different. Some loan officer may need the drill sergeant type coach that's holding them super accountable, in their face, saying, you got to do this, you're doing that. If you're not, you're paying me money, like that type of stuff. Right. Some people need the coach that's just going to show them the playbook, call them on their BS. And I'll try to keep it clean for the for this episode, but they're going to call them on their BS and then be there to mentor them. Right.
Yeah.
Some people want something that's just passive, and it's kind of like, self, just kind of like,
Let it soak.
self-paced, on-demand type, courses, and have someone that's just, and they could have calls and ask questions, right? Every one of them. And then also, like, I need a framework. I need a lock, a system that I go in place, and not every coaching program does that either, right? Because everything is different. And so, as a loan officer that's looking from that perspective, that's where you start, because that's the only way that you're going to be successful. You got to find that right fit. You got to know what you're looking for. A lot of people, because I see it in Facebook groups, hey, what's a good coaching program out there? And sometimes I get tagged, sometimes others do get tagged, but that's it. Like, okay. And then when I ask, and I said, look, and I put in like this big long essay of an answer to it, and a lot of people love it because they're like, yeah, I didn't really. And sometimes, like 9 times out of 10, they're like, yeah, I didn't even think about if I'm ready to receive it, or I didn't even think about I don't have anything written down on what I want from a coach, because everyone's going to tell you something great and why their system is good.
Yeah.
But doesn't mean it's going to be good for you, right? So you got to know what you want, where you're trying to going, and then you do your calls and your conversations to find which is going to be the best vehicle to get you there. Because here's the thing: you may decide, like, for example, I'll bring up the core. Core may be what you need right now, but it may not be what you need in 6 months. Right? Then it might be something else, and then something else. So just know that you're going to have seasons in your career, right? And during those seasons, you may need a certain level of coaching. And then on another season, you may need something else that is, because I've had calls with people from every coaching program, right? And most of it is because either it didn't work for them, they outgrew it, or it just wasn't, they didn't know what they were getting into in the first place.
Yeah.
Right. So like I said, there's never a coaching, but it's, a perfect coaching program. It's really about the fit.
Yeah. No, I like it. I like your statement. There's no perfect company, but there is a perfect fit. Mm-hmm. And being able to first understand what you need, and what style you like would help you determine what a coach is. It's funny. I'm looking for my new coach. So this is a perfect conversation. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking for my new coach. And I'm trying to find someone ahead of me. And there are tons of people that are ahead of me. But I'm also looking for somebody that is that fit. And I interviewed this coaching guy, but I never could get to the main guy of who I wanted to coach. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to keep his name out. So I'll just call it now. I'm just trying to keep his name out. And instead I got his team, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, you can't coach me. I'm ahead of you. And I don't want to be coached by the team. I want to be coached by him. If that's not going to work, they came back. They go, yeah, it sounds like you're not the right fit, because if you don't want us to coach you as the team, then there's no way he could coach you. And I thought, well, you're right. I'm not the right fit. I was offended at first. Yeah. But it was honest back to me, and I was honest to them. But really diving in of what do I want? I don't know if necessarily I've always asked myself that question. What's my next thing that I want? I almost want the coach to be able to say, Chris, this is what you want, go do it. But it doesn't work that way. Yeah. I have to actually know what I want. Do you agree? Oh, 100%. Because it's you. And now I will say that a good coach will have a conversation that helps you kind of, that doesn't tell you what you need, but through the conversation and asking the right questions, you kind of answer that yourself of what you need. Because you, and this happens all the time. I have someone that schedules a one-on-one session with me, and they'll put in the calendar invite exactly what they're looking for and whatever. And by the end of the conversation, it's an entirely different conversation. Right. Because once they start telling me things, it's not a simple like, hey, I want to get good at, realtor outreach. Great. Sure. Why? Right. Why are you trying to do that? And then we start getting into the business, the numbers, and then before you know it, we're talking about something completely different, because it's my job as a coach is to try to pull that out of them of what really matters. Now, what they came to me might have been important, but more times than not, we cover that stuff because I'm like, look, that's surface level stuff. And honestly, that's what you thought about in your head as being important. But then we got into all this other stuff and realized, like, man, you're trying to build a second story of a house. You haven't even laid the foundation. Right. So I could tell you to build that second story,
but you're going to be pissed because you're going to get zero results, or you're not going to get the results that you want to. We got to focus on the foundation first, right? Or let me have you think differently about your foundation. And again, I have to also be careful is that, one thing that I'm not an originator, right? And so I always tell loan officers, and I comment a lot on in groups and stuff like that. And I've built a rep so far that people, I think, understand where I'm coming from. I said, look, I'm never going to tell you how to be a better loan officer, right? I could tell you, I've been a salesperson. I've been a sales manager, right? I've done sales, and marketing obviously is my expertise. And I'm going to tell you how to get at bats. I'm going to tell you how to attract people. I'm going to tell you how to do the stuff that matters from customer acquisition. I'm trying to get you that at bat. But after that, then you got to be a loan officer, right? You got to talk about things that matter to the consumer. Then you got to structure loans. And I'm not doing any of that, right? So there's a difference there, but it's also having that conversation with them is that, I think, look, I'm probably one of the few coaches that is an originator out there that coaches loan officers. But again, it's because I focus on the things that they care about in regards to customer acquisition, lead generation, marketing, messaging, that type of stuff, retention, because it's human. It's human communication, right? Like that's my specialty. And so, but again, you don't get to that point when they start off saying like, I want to like figure out how to do reels that generate leads, right? On Instagram that generate leads. It could start there. But the conversation, because any coach worth anything is going to ask questions. It's going to ask questions to make sure that they are giving exactly the information that person needs at that particular time.
Right. It's like the customer that calls in that says, "Hey, Jason, what's your rate?"
Yeah.
Really, that what they're asking is that I'm looking for a particular payment, but they don't know how to ask that, so they ask what the rate is. I feel like a lot of loan officers, in a sense, ask that, and maybe I've been guilty of asking a question that really I was wanting something else but didn't know how to say it.
Yeah.
So coaching in 2024, is it different today than it's ever been?
I think so. And I think the reason why is because, if we look back at one is, I think everyone needs to realize that we were kind of in the golden age of anomaly, right? We had a great run of inventory, great rates, affordability, bookend between two major world events that affected both, right? We had the financial meltdown, financial meltdown in 07, 08, right?
Yep.
Then we had a global pandemic, right? In 2020, in the 2021, right?
Yep.
We had two back-to-back record years where we did double the origination that we normally do in a given year, which will lead to a consumer deficit, right? So people are thinking like, hey, it's just business, right? I did stuff one year, and then normally what happens the next year is that. But like when you take two normal cycles back-to-back, there's the balloons. There it is. There's the balloons. I do that every time.
Is it two? Like I haven't learned like all the.
I think it's the two, because every time I do that, it's the balloon. It shocked me at first, but you do that back to back. You understand that you just took a complete consumer cycle out of the rotation, right? It's a normal transition year of consumers from year after year, just like it normally is, right? Normalized market, but you did that back-to-back years, so you're at a 2-year deficit of a normal market, right? And people don't think about it in terms. They're like, well, it's just a year, and people are going to buy. Not when we did what we did, right? Record low rates, like you couldn't kick a can without hitting some deal, right? And then we get into 2022, right? And then 2023, and the reason why it's different is because everyone's trying to do the same things that they did before. And it's just not working, right? And they one is they don't want to admit that it's not working. It's not on their comfort level. And so last year was a hard year for coaching, because the conversations that I was having with originators were ones that had already taken second jobs just to make ends, and they did great, right? They dipped into their savings, and they didn't understand what I just explained right there. They looked, and no one really talked about that type of stuff. Like I'm different in how I look at things, and a lot of that I learned by working with, because Peter, who is is kind of a master contrarian, and so learning, working and understanding how he, looking and being around him, being a sponge for 4 years at his hedge fund, and seeing what going from 100 AUM to over 8 billion AUM in 4 years is, was based off of being a contrarian. And so understanding the decisions that he made and why he made them and how he looked at things, that's just kind of my outlook. And I'm a contrarian in general, but I kind of like weaponized it by working with him. And then so when I was looking at the market and rates and everything else based off of what people were saying, it just didn't make sense to me, because there has to be some results from that. And look, I'm never going to pretend to be like a Barry Habib or a secondary markets guy, or a capital market secondary guy. That's not me. But I was prepping for it to be like this, right? To be bad and to be really bad. And then, I had a great teacher in my mom, and understand that when we're talking about changes in the market, right? Changes in the housing market, is that whether it was the crash, the pandemic, or anything else, understand that the market never, ever comes back the same. It comes back different. And guess what? When something comes back different, you can't do strategies and deploy what your tactics that you did in a market that just doesn't simply exist anymore, right? You cannot do that. So it's understanding that the changes that have to happen, meaning that you need a new way of looking at things. And all due respect to all the coaching programs, they're still talking about the things as if that market still exists. Now, I will agree somewhat. One is like the term back to basics is like it's next to marry the house, date the rate. Back to basics. Back to basics is probably the worst thing. And it's horrible advice, by the way. Right now, what I would say is it's about evolving the fundamentals, like the fundamentals of relationship, communication, calls, that type of stuff. Absolutely, you should be doing that. However, the messaging can't be the same. And all I'm seeing, and Mark, because I study this stuff, this isn't like, hey, I'm just guessing, but like I study the messaging and the content that's put out there from the bigger brands and and everything, and understand that we're doing the same messaging, the same exact messaging that we did in a market that just doesn't exist. So we have to do things differently, right?
Yeah.
Now it doesn't, so like that's where I'm getting the most attention from, is because that's the messaging I'm putting out. And that is where I'm seeing a lot of the loan officers like, look, I don't want the power hour. I don't want all these other, which are basically repackaged of the same frameworks, just different names, because it's not yielding them results. So I need a different way of looking at that. And so that's what I would say. Coaching in 2024 is that all the programs out there, including ours, need to react to the market that we're in, and also be proactive in the new market that's going to be birthed for the next, because if you look historically at market swings in a new, more normalized market, it's about a 5 to 10 year swing. Like we just had it, right? And so understanding that we have to also be proactive and look at what's going to be the future as well, and not just what's in front of us today.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think that that's probably the most important reason why the majority of the loan officers need some type of coach. I mean, a coach is different than a boss.
Yep.
A coach is different than the best loan officer in the company. And a lot of times the best loan officer in the company is not a coach. They might say, well, go do this or go do that, but understanding it. In closing, I mean, Jason, what are 3 things that a loan officer needs to be working on today for 2024 then?
Yeah. So I would, if I'm breaking it down into 3 things, I'm talking about, one is they got to grab attention, right? First and foremost, right? And you've probably heard the term attention is currency, 100% true. But whether that currency is a penny or $100 bill isn't completely up to the way you execute. But you got to have before you could tell me about your brand, your programs, why you're the greatest loan officer to work with, or anything else, you got to have my attention. Right now, once you have my intention, now you have permission to market to me to make an impact, because that's what's going to create the stickiness, right? I need to have your attention, then you make an impact. And then once you do that, then you become relevant. And to do that is you got to start. And again, I'm not going to be like, hey, you got to put out content, but you got to be known. And whatever that means in your world, do that, and that's going out person to person, belly to belly, networking events, right? Masterminds, right? Doing seminars, in-person seminars, putting out content, running ads, doing billboards, radio, whatever it means to you to be known in the market that you want to do business is, you got to do that because you got to grab attention, right? So one is you got to find out what that's going to be for you, right? Then number two is, how am I going to be effective and compete in those areas for the consumer's attention? Because it's a noisy world out there, right? What am I going to do? You got to have a plan. You got to have a strategy, right? Then three is you got to execute, right? This isn't rocket science, guys. Now the things are changed, tactics are changed, strategies are changing, but ultimately you got to make a non-negotiable commitment to execute. Because I'll tell you right now, you do those three things, you are in the 10% of loan officers in the country. 90% of the things that Chris and I have talked about on this entire call, loan officer, your competition's never going to do. They don't believe it. They don't understand it. And if they don't believe it or understand it, then they're going to be afraid of it and they're not going to do it. Right? It's fear of being uncomfortable. So if you do those three things that I'm talking about, the grabbing the attention, having a plan, having a strategy, and executing, again, it's not rocket. I wish I had some crazy framework or some new thing of doing it, but it's really, and that's what I talked about, evolving the fundamentals, but you got to evolve in every three of those areas. So it's not just attention, evolving in that attention, evolving in your plans and strategies, and evolving in your execution. If you do that, you are going to be in the 10% of loan officers. And I'm telling you, it's only going to be more competitive and difficult to do those things here on out because consumers have changed, right? We have a new mortgage market. It's not ever going back to the way it's going to be. And so you got to adjust for that. You got to adapt. And the last thing that I'll say, and it's kind of like a bonus thing, is that accepting change and adapting to change is not enough. Instead, be a change creator. Create the change, because when you do that, guess what? You're leading. You're not following. You're the voice and not the echo.
Yeah, that's very good. Plus, what an attractive trait to become, the creator, in a sense, to your database, to your realtors, to your people inside your community. It's the greatest branding you could ever do because they're not going to forget you.
Yeah, 100%.
How do I get connected with you? If I want to get involved, if I want to check out 2020, if I want to be able to, I'm thinking about maybe this coaching thing is for me. Maybe I need to take that step. Maybe I need to do something to be able to find out what it all looks like. How do I get connected?
Yeah, so if you want to get connected with me, you could go to brokercmo.com. And then if you want, and then there's links to Vision, our coaching from there. And then if you want to go directly to 2020, you go to visionyoursuccess.net.
Awesome. Simple. Go in there, put in the request. You guys will reach back out and be able to connect right with them. That's so cool. Jason, thank you for coming on. Thanks for talking a little bit about coaching. I'm telling you, my biggest takeaway is that asking yourself those questions. And then number two is be the creator. Yeah. Be that one person out there that goes out there and paves that new way. And you're right. 90% of the loan officers won't do it. You might as well be the one that will. So
that's your opportunity. Well, Chris, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you. Thanks.
Yep.
See ya.